Welcome to the Dish on Divorce. I'm Jennifer Barkin.
And I'm Leanne Townsend.
And we're very happy to be talking about the matrimonial home and divorce this week with our guest, Robert Barkin.
Hello.
Hi, Robert.
Welcome
nice
to the show.
Meet you.
Well, thank you guys for having me.
It's a bit of a family affair
We
here
have the
today.
same last name, so nice to meet you. My little corny joke of the day.
Yeah, right.
No nepotism.
None at all.
No.
None at all.
Zero,
No.
none.
None at all. So the matrimonial home, a lot of times when people are going through a divorce, that is the major asset in the marriage. What do you find difficult with your clients when they're getting a divorce?
Well, I guess the hardest part is just when the clients are going through a divorce, it's probably one of the most stressful times in their life. And the second most stressful time in their life is selling their house, which is their castle. So when you combine two together, it kind of can be a perfect storm, and we're dealing with a lot of emotions. So I kind of look at myself like I'm the United Nations. I kind of have to deal with both people calmly, equally, and try to take emotion out of a very emotional situation so that we can get things done in a good, timely manner and, get it over with so that they can move on with whatever they want to move on with.
And now, I don't think you mentioned it at the beginning, but you're a real estate agent.
Yes.
I should have mentioned that.
People probably figured that anyway, but I just thought just to make it clear so
That's correct.
that the listeners understand.
I'm a real estate agent. I'm a realtor with Remax Hallmark in Toronto.
Okay. And do you deal with a lot of clients is that like one of your primary clientele over the years, people going through divorce?
You know, that's a big reason that many people do sell their house and look to move. So I do quite a bit of that. And so it's kind of something that we've learned to deal with and work on for quite a long time. And I'm very experienced.
Now, I'm a family mediator, so one thing that I find, I have to be very mindful that one party doesn't think that I'm siding with them or that I'm more empathetic towards them. Do you ever get in a situation where one side, because you're doing a negotiation, they feel that you care more, maybe you care more about what the husband feels or the wife feels? Do you find that you really have to work at being that neutral?
You kind of have to, but you really just need to speak and deal with both sides equally. And part of dealing with people is getting to know them. And everybody's different, but sometimes right away you can learn which one kind of is the more controlling person, which one is not. But you need to speak with both of them equally and give them the same information. What makes it kind of difficult is, say, if we're putting a house up for sale and there's tasks that need to be done, you need to relay the same information to two people. So maybe it sometimes doubles the work, but if you don't keep people informed, then it gets into a situation where they think that you're favoring the other person. And it's, really, I'm not favoring anybody. My job is they hired me to sell their house. I'm there to sell their house. I'm there to kind of take the stress off of them and not add any more stress to them.
I would think that that's a common problem because I know with my clients, for example, when it comes up, they're going to sell the matrimonial home. The first issue is the battle of who gets to pick the real estate agent. And, it's somehow like seen as a power thing, to be the one who gets to pick. And so often, what's done is, one party puts forward three names and then the other party gets to pick from the three names. But, time and time again, I'll have clients contacting me that, they feel that the real estate agent is favoring, their ex and they're all angry about it. And they don't seem to understand that, you're a professional, you're regulated. I'm presuming would get in a lot of trouble if you were to compromise your ethics and your position, just to benefit one owner of a jointly held house. So why would you put yourself on the line that way?
Well, I work on a referral basis, so I wouldn't want to risk my entire business and my reputation on just, favoring some person in a divorce that is really not my, it's not my battle. I'm there just to be in the middle. I'm there to help them sell their house and listen. I do want feedback from people. If somebody does feel that I'm favoring the other, well, I'd like to know that so that I can, kind of cover that and stop it. Because it's really not my intention. Everything we're doing is for both people equally to sell their house with as little stress as possible.
So I've heard some crazy stories. So I'm wondering how you advise your clients. I've heard stories of real estate agents going through the closets and, before they show a house to their client, and, picking up on a couple of things like half of the walk-in closet in the master bedroom is empty, meaning, and I'm not seeing any men's clothing, so looks like he's already moved out. So it looks like I can get my client this house for a cheaper price. Are those sort of things common?
Well, you want to look for a lot of reasons to find out why people are selling. And you walk around a house.
Did you look in the closet?
Well, we open up the closet door. I definitely won't be opening up drawers or touching any of their personal things. And, if a house is prepared and staged properly, if there are like empty spots in the closet, the other clothing should be moved around to kind of block that. And on the flip side, if it's a property I'm listing and one of the people have moved out, it's the same thing. We don't want to have your house to have like a half empty closet and the other one that's half full, or all the way full, bursting at the seams. You want to have the closet staged all together.
Is it seen as, like if a couple is divorcing, is that viewed in the real estate market as, like maybe there's a deal here, or is it, viewed, differently than in other type of situation?
Not really. We sometimes will ask people what their motivation is to sell, but realistically, it's all about how the house is presented and how their particular agent is dealing with things. If they're kind of letting out too much information, like I wouldn't let out the information that my couple is divorcing. It's really not not the business of the buyer. The buyer doesn't even know. The buyer needs to know if they like the house and if it's going to work for them. That's all we really care about. They don't need to know the seller's motivation. I'm not going to open up a door for somebody to come and bring money, to pull money down.
Have you ever had experiences? I've had situations where the client's spouse doesn't want to get out of the home and it needs to be repaired in order to be put on the market and staged and all of that, and you have a very uncooperative spouse who's kind of living there, well, usually the other party is the one funding everything, so they have no incentive to get out. Have you had any situations like that?
Oh my gosh, yes, we have. I've had people that will sit on the sofa during showings. I always counsel people, please leave the house, because when a buyer wants to come look at your house, they don't want to, feel uncomfortable going into your cupboards and looking around. We've had this one guy. He was sitting on the sofa. He wouldn't leave. Sometimes he would cancel appointments at the last minute when people are on the driveway and just not let them in. And then,
wow.
What the heck are you trying to prove? I know you're upset, but I'm on your side. I'm here to try to make money for you and to kind of get this over with so that the stress level can kind of go down a little bit. But don't seem to get it. But
that's the
thankfully, that's
story
the
of
exception
divorce,
rather than the rule.
Where sometimes people's emotions really are in the way, and we're not thinking about money and what, behaving a certain way, how we could win if we just act difficult.
I wouldn't say that's just
difficult.
I wouldn't really say that's just divorce on its own. It's just part of negotiation and part of sales. Sometimes that you'll have a family and they can't afford to keep the house, and they're not getting divorced, at least not yet. And there's a lot of stress and a lot of tension, and it's no different.
It must be hard though to be in a situation where you have two parties who, don't trust each other. And you're trying to make sure to keep them on the same page. Everyone's goal should be the same, but you're dealing, with two people who just, probably don't trust each other. So how do you manage that kind of relationship?
Leanne, it's like dealing with children. It really is, because you kind of have to take control of the situation and, talk to both equally and talk to them together if you can, and sometimes you can't. You have to be apart. Sometimes they go through lawyers. But if you take control of the situation and kind of lay it out ahead of time, what the process is, what they can expect, and what my role is. And my role is not to favor one person over the other. My role is just to get their house sold and to deal with both of them equally and just to keep them both informed. A lot of it is also just, for them to gain my trust, because, if they don't trust me, they're not going to make the job easy.
And I would think that people, when they're getting divorced and they're selling the house, I mean, it's one thing when it's your choice to sell a house, but it can be very upsetting when it's not your choice to have to move and add the emotions. This is where I brought my children home, and it's sort of the end of the dream for the family. Do people fear financing for another house, and do you help them with that?
Well, at times. Before we find somebody, let's say we have somebody's house sold and they have to move. The very first thing that we'll do, even well prior to that, is, yeah, of course, help them get their financing, and so that they know whether they're going to be able to buy something or rent something well in advance. And those are kind of things that we start at the beginning of the relationship, so that there is no surprise once their house is sold. Like, we know they have to sell their house. Then they have the unknown of where they're going to go. You don't want to really buy something or rent something until your current home is sold, or it's pretty close down the road to being sold, and you expect that they know what's going to happen. But you really need to go to your financial advisors, or if they don't have one, we can recommend one, mortgage broker, so that we can pre-qualify someone well in advance.
And if people want to buy another house and they're going through divorce, do they need a final separation agreement?
I don't know of any major bank that would finance a real estate transaction without a separation agreement.
One of the issues that I find comes up a lot with clients, that's one of them that Jennifer just mentioned, but also the idea of whether you should get an opinion letter from a real estate agent or an appraisal. Can you explain to listeners, what the difference is and maybe the advantages and disadvantages of each one?
Well, I get called on quite often, probably about 3 or 4 times a month, just to write different letters of opinion, whether it's for an estate or whether it's for a divorce. I'm not a licensed appraiser, so I could not do an appraisal, say, for a bank, just for the financing purposes. But I've taken a lot of courses on appraisal. I know how to appraise a house. I know how to appraise a house to sell it. So I can write a letter and walk through the house and explain, what we feel the market value of the house will be. And in my letter of opinion, I will even write, a few of my suggestions that we can help increase the value of the house. A full appraisal is done by a bank, and the appraiser will go through and look at some previous sales. They'll measure the house, but really they haven't seen every single house in the neighborhood or as much as, say, the realtors have. But the banks will rely on that, and with an appraisal, they usually come in a bank appraisal or an appraisal company, they usually come in a little bit lower, especially in the kind of marketplace that we're in right now, than we would really see in selling a house.
Is there like another type of appraiser that's like a market appraiser or anything like that, or is it really just the like what would essentially be the bank appraisal versus an opinion letter, or is there something in between?
There are appraisal companies that do appraisals for the bank, and you can pay them, and they will do an appraisal for divorce. I don't really get into that very, very often, because when I get hired, they pay me to do a letter of opinion. Now, if it goes to court, the letter of opinion can maybe be tossed out, and then they'll demand a proper bank appraisal. So yeah, my letter of opinion can't go to court, but it can go to the court of public approval, say, on the MLS to sell a house.
It's got my approval.
Exactly.
So regardless, like whether you're getting divorced or whether you're just selling your house, what would you recommend to people who want to sell their house? The easiest, let's say, the top 3 things that they could do for very little money to get more money for their house.
Get rid of your crap. Empty your cupboards. Anything
People
you
have crap?
Do that right now.
Anything you haven't touched in the past.
You don't do that as part of your job? No?
We do. Actually, I'll walk.
You clean people's houses?
Never. But I'll walk through someone's house with them and give them a whole list of things to get rid of before we send people in to help prepare the house.
So declutter.
Everyone's house is different, but the reality is that when a buyer comes into a house, they want to picture themselves there, and they don't want to focus on people's clutter, the smells in their house. If there's some minor repairs that need to be done, I want them to do that, because a little minor repair can end up to be thousands of dollars in a sale price.
What about pets? If people have pets, like, is that a
Speaking of smells.
Yeah, speaking of smells, I have 2 dogs, one of who loves to urinate on my carpet, so there's always that smell in the house. But I'm curious, if you have, say, dogs or cats, when potential buyers come in and look at a house, is that a negative that, you know, you might have a dog in one of the rooms, you know, barking or running
Some people don't
around.
love dogs. Some
Yeah.
people do. I do ask people if they're able to please take the dog out of the house during showings. That way, people coming into the house can walk through the house freely. People who don't love animals, they may not know your dog. Your dog might bark, but and be a really friendly dog to you and your friends, but they could be scared of it. So
Yeah.
I'd rather that their focus be on the house, and that's the kind of the easiest thing. If your dog is peeing in the carpet and kind of making a bit of a mess, and maybe the dog has anxiety and gets scared or something, it would be very difficult, I guess, for you to take your dog, get rid of it for a few weeks while you're selling the house. But again, before you take your dog out, just do the sniff test, walk around, and make sure that if they have that.
Oh, we
it's
become
cleaned
immune
up.
to that sniff
Yeah,
test.
that's
We need a
true.
stranger. So decluttering the house, what else can people do that wouldn't break the bank?
Paint. The best investment you can ever do is to paint your house. Even though that you just painted it 3 years ago, you probably painted it in a color that won't look good in pictures and will not, I guess, will not be great for people walking through the house. So a coat of paint. We have a bunch of colors that we'll use depending on the house.
What are the top two?
Well, we like Chantilly lace.
Chantilly
Oh, I
lace,
just painted
Benjamin
that.
Moore.
I just painted
Benjamin Moore.
Chantilly lace, my whole main floor.
OC
There you go.
something.
It's like 11C. That's
Yeah.
a really good one.
Oh, that's good to know. At least I won't have to paint.
You put me on the
possibly.
spot right now with the exact colors. I have it listed right now. But they're all like, there's either a white with a little
Neutrals,
bit of
right?
beige in it, a little bit of gray in it, a little tiny bit of blue in it. But yeah, it's very neutral. You don't want to have somebody walking in an emerald green dining room because you might really like emerald green, but somebody coming through your house isn't going to like it.
So it looks like your father's going to have to do a lot of painting before he lists that house.
Quite possibly.
Okay. So we have paint, we have decluttering. Anything else?
Well, getting the house to smell well. If again, each house is different, so I can't really walk through, give you an exact for every single thing in the world. But I want the house to look good, I want it to smell good, and I want somebody to walk in and say, wow, I want to buy this. So a lot of things I like to do is just stage the entrance. Get a nice, get a pot with some flowers, because while the people are waiting outside the house, they're looking around, checking out the neighbors. I want them to have a warm feeling. So just even a pot of flowers right at the entrance, outside the house while the realtor is going through the lockbox trying to open up the house, kind of sets the stage for walking into the house. So as soon as you walk in, I want it to be great.
It's funny, one of the things that goes against my natural instinct that I've been told by real estate agents is, I get this part. They say that when someone comes in the home, you want them to be able to picture themselves living there. And so one of the things they say you should do is you don't want to have a lot of photographs around. And it's funny because to me, like when I walk in a home and there's photos of the family, I'm kind of like, oh, like this is such a nice home. It has such a homey feel, and it actually, I find it warm and it draws me in. But I've been told by real estate agents that that's a no-no.
Maybe you have really bad pictures in your house. I don't
Maybe.
know. No. If it depends. If you have like a massive wall and the whole wall is like pictures of your family and it's really kind of standing out, yeah, maybe we should tone that down a little bit. But there's nothing wrong with having pictures of your family in your house. It is your house. I don't have an issue with that. Again, it's just the amount of it. If you have like a whole shrine to some like that dead aunt that passed away 20 years ago, yes, please maybe that would be best to pack that up right now. But
So
if it's
we
a
have to
couple
get the
pictures of you and your
urns of
kids,
the relatives off the fireplace mantle.
no,
No, it's not good?
not a great thing.
Okay.
Yeah, you might want to put that away.
Okay. And if somebody was going to spend more money on fixing up a house, what sells houses? And where would you put the money?
Well, sometimes if someone's going to fix up the house and it's like a house that's going to, I just recently sold one. We had a house that was it was a townhouse at Bayview North Mills that had nothing done to it since about 1985. Their carpet was full of mold. There was carpet in the bathrooms that the person didn't have the greatest aim, so that was like really smelly. What we did is we went through the house, we cleaned up everything, and I had floor plans made so whoever's buying the house, they can go home, print it out, take some liquid paper, remove walls, put furniture in, give the floor plan with dimensions to a flooring company, a painting company, so that they can help budget what they need to do. So it's more on my end things that we would have to do in something like that. Cool. There's some houses that are complete disasters that a coat of paint and some lighting can do wonders for. Some houses, you just can't do anything. So if you can't do anything, you want to embrace it.
This is kind of putting you on the spot a little bit, but
Go
what's
ahead.
kind of the funniest story that you have of, a house that you were selling, and something kind of funny, like you had the one about the guy who was always there on the couch, but something along those lines.
Weird. Well, we did have a house that, I have a couple of them. I had a house that I sold last winter, and they were so excited that Canada's marijuana laws allow you to have, I think, up to 5 plants. So he had his 5 plants in the house, in his bedroom, with a light shining down on them, and he refused to take it out of the house. And when I was making feedback calls to people who showed the house, everybody kept commenting on, oh, I really like the garden in the bedroom. That was kind of interesting. Another one was in the basement. It was a house that actually I was touring with a client. It wasn't one that I listed myself. We were looking around, and there was a blow-up doll, kind of half deflated behind.
Oh, no.
Oh
Yes.
my God.
Oh, no.
I took a picture of that. So that kind of was like kind of the weirdest thing.
And do you keep a straight face? Like,
Hell no.
what do you do in this situation?
You laugh. What would you do? Like, come on. When you're dealing with people, it's a relationship, and you're kind of dealing with humans. So it's like, what can you do? Oh, it's just normal. I see these things every day. No, I don't. It's kind of weird and funny. So, yeah. You see a lot of weird
really,
stuff.
really funny.
I've seen like bottles of like alcohol with like scorpions inside them.
Oh my God.
And they're like centered right in the middle of the dining room. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of weird, but people have interesting things.
Have you ever had to sell a home where there was like a pet snake, or that would freak me out?
I'm sure there's. I have. I
That
haven't
would be
known
for me
about
like
it.
a big no on a house
No.
to begin with. If there's like a snake that was.
I did have a house in Lawrence Park that was an estate, and while we were getting the house ready, we found a lot of weapons. There must have been about 6 or 7 guns and like 3 rifles.
Wow.
So
They weren't stored properly, I guess.
they were just inside the bar, like
Wow.
underneath the in the
nice.
cupboard. So yeah, that was kind of interesting.
So what would be the top, maybe 2 things that you would advise people who are going through divorce and they're looking to list their house and they want it, to sell for as much as possible. They're both on the same page with that. What would be your top 2 pieces of advice in that situation?
Well, number 1, paint, and number 2, declutter, and I got to have a third, bring in a stager and actually have the house, each room have a focal point and just set up to a point that, or even decluttered or taking things away or putting things in, just to sell it and kind of make it look like it's been merchandised and ready to go.
Do you find that people say, hey, I don't need a stager, I have fabulous taste, and what's wrong with the furniture that I have? Perfectly good.
Yeah, well, we have a lot of people that are like that. I have a house that right now that's being prepared that has a leopard sofa. And these people love their leopard sofa. But, we have to kind of be very diplomatic. You don't want to offend somebody in their taste. We can tell them things like, it's very important that the house kind of shows very well in photos. And sometimes when something's a little bit busy, it doesn't show well in pictures. And we would be better if we were to rent something that might be a little smaller as well, because we do want to get qualified people into your house.
And I guess you can add at the end, and I'll probably make you an extra $10,000, $15,000.
Well, anything I recommend for people will not only sell their house faster, will make them more money. I'm not going to recommend a service or someone to do something if it's not going to benefit them at all.
At the end, that's the bottom line, getting the most that you can.
That exactly it, and that also helps diffuse a lot of the tension that's going to happen. The longer a home is for sale, the more people are going to fight, and the more people are fighting, the harder it is for me. The harder it is on them. The harder it is on their lawyers because they're getting calls at 3 o'clock in the morning that this guy didn't do something.
Well, it seems like it is one of the most stressful situations that I find where I get those emergency calls. Is the marital home's about to close, or there's an offer that's come in and they're not agreeing, and those types of situations. Definitely that's where I hear from people.
Yeah, I think thankfully I haven't really had any major fights with people on the offer table, because once they made the decision to sell their house, then we're talking about dollars and cents, or we're talking about a few other things they both want to sell. But also, my job is to get them as much money as possible as I can. So if there is money to be left on the table, I have to go pull it off, and kind of you got to explain that to people. Sometimes you'll have people that are afraid to sign something without sending it to their lawyer, but I can understand that.
Do you ever get involved in situations where one of the parties wants to buy the house and it's had to still go on the market, anyway, pursuant to maybe an order for petition and sale or something. But one of the parties very much wants to buy it. I find those situations can be a little bit complicated sometimes.
We don't like those situations.
Yeah.
Oh, I know some of those situations.
It happens, and if
And then one spouse has to buy back their house and
at market price
at
or
market.
the best offer or whatever.
And I guess that talks about when you just have so much emotion tied to that home or that cottage
100%.
or that whatever it may be, right?
it's an emotional, listen, it's their home, they're dealing with a divorce, the emotions are really out high.
So Rob, if anybody wants to find you, where can they reach you?
Very easy. Go to my website, www.robertbarkin.ca, and you can send me a note through there, and I get it instantly, so I'll reach out and get back to you right away.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. This was really helpful, and I learned some things today, so thank you for that.
And thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us, Robert. I'm Jennifer Barkin,
And I'm Leanne Townsend.
and we hope to see you next time on The Dish on Divorce.
Bye for now.
Bye.